Welcome everyone to the Liverpool Daily News. I'm your host for this morning, David Comerford, and I'm joined by Andrew Beasley. And last night we saw the Ballon d'Or ceremony take place, and there was only one nominee from Liverpool. It was quite the come down from last year when they had several players on the list after going for the quadruple, but this time it was only Mohamed Salah who made it into the final 30, and he ended up finishing in 11th place. Obviously, Messi won the award in the end. Erling Haaland was second and Kylian Mbappe was third. So, Andrew, what's your reaction to that? Do you think that's, broadly speaking, a fair final ranking for Mohamed Salah based on last season?
I mean, to be honest, it seems unfair to me. I mean, I personally, I don't take these things too seriously. I know, obviously, some fans put a lot of faith in such things, but I mean, it's totally sort of judged on how your team does and stuff like this. You know, whether Messi was truly the best player or not. With Argentina winning the World Cup, he was always likely to win this award, for example. You look at someone like Salah, obviously Liverpool didn't have a great season, but even despite that, I mean, he scored 30 goals and got 16 assists. Now, I don't know the figures for everyone else on the list, but I mean, that's a series. There won't be many players in the world who've got more than that. So for me, really, he should be in the conversation for, if not winning it, then, you know, certainly in perhaps the top five with that level of output. As I say, I don't pay too much attention to it. I mean, I knew we'd be talking about it, so I sort of pulled up the list here of who's on it and stuff like that. And again, a lot of Manchester City players, perfectly understandable because they won the treble and stuff like that. But yeah, it just sort of feels a bit like Salah's a little bit hard done by, purely on the sense that it's an individual award. And on an individual basis, he had an excellent season last year.
So, just thinking about that, I mean, if we look at some of the players, you know, below him on the list, you know, you've got Lewandowski, obviously, in Barcelona won La Liga last year. Bono, the Sevilla and Morocco goalkeeper, obviously they reached the semi-finals of the World Cup. Gundogan, treble winner with Man City. Martinez, World Cup winner. Kvaratskhelia is in 17th. He obviously won Serie A as well. I mean, when you look at the list, Salah's kind of the one that stands out as, I mean, in terms of his ranking, like he's up there. He hasn't been able to win anything. So when you look at the players around him in the list and the collective accomplishments that they've had, in a way, it's actually impressive to see him as high as 11th, given that virtually every single player, kind of either side, and whether it's above or a few places below, have kind of tasted silverware last season. So I think you can take that positive spin on it as well, can't you?
Yeah, no, to be fair, that is a good way of looking at it because, as I said, these things do tend to be almost defined by team success rather than to get into that sort of upper echelon, if not quite the top 10. From what was a difficult season, then yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, I suspect he's perhaps bothered about it. He seems the sort of player who likes to be recognised for what he achieves and stuff like that. So he's probably more bothered about it than I am, which is fair enough. But yeah, as you say, you know, to do that, to get high up when Liverpool didn't have a great year, sort of shows the impact he made because he's still picking up votes to get that high up the list, if not perhaps as high as I think he deserves.
Yeah, so if we look kind of ahead now, having, you know, dwelled on this year's list, I mean, obviously Messi, this will surely now be his last Ballon d'Or. I mean, people probably thought that the last time he won it, but, you know, he's playing for Inter Miami and obviously in MLS. Ronaldo, you know, with the man who's been kind of competing with him virtually every single year for that award, is playing for obviously Al Nassr in the Saudi Pro League. So it feels like yesterday marked the end of an era in a sense. So now you've got kind of a new era of superstars vying for the trophy. Salah's in there. Jude Bellingham, you'd have to say, is in there. Erling Haaland, Kylian Mbappe, maybe Kevin De Bruyne as well. I mean, how do you see that battle unfolding, not just this year, but in years to come? I mean, Salah feels like he's got a much improved chance now with those two kind of titans out of Europe.
Yeah, definitely. I guess Salah is one of those guys that feels a bit like he sort of bridges the gap between Messi and Ronaldo, and then obviously Haaland and Mbappe, who were second and third this year. He's obviously, you know, age-wise between those two pairs. You know, his chances of winning it may even have gone just due to his his age. And obviously, I mean, it's fairly reasonable to assume that Haaland's going to score as many goals as Salah for the rest of the time that Salah's at Liverpool. That is sort of the likely outcome. So it may be that, Salah doesn't maybe ever finish in the top three again and stuff like that. I mean, I think most people would expect Haaland and Mbappe to be contesting it now for the sort of foreseeable future. There will always be other players who sort of come in and out of that discussion. I think obviously Bellingham's making a huge case, certainly with how he started at Real Madrid. And of course, before the next one happens, we have a European Championship. Well, maybe if England were to win that and Bellingham scores loads of goals and stuff like that, that puts him in a good place, because as we've seen with Messi, international success plays a huge part in this. So, Bellingham is another young player who will definitely be involved. I'm sure there are plenty of Liverpool supporters who would like to see Dominic Szoboszlai up there, but with how he's been playing for the team, he's been fantastic. Probably a bit of a stretch, but I think probably Haaland and Mbappe, because they're the goal scorers. Bellingham as well. It's probably those three at the top end, you would think, for the next decade or so.
Yeah, and I think myself and James Martin kind of took a look at in one of our Liverpool.com podcasts at kind of which Liverpool players might be sort of up there in years to come. Obviously Salah in that discussion, but maybe a few other shouts as well if kind of everything goes their way. And it's interesting that you mentioned the international tournaments. I mean, in the 21-22 season, I mean, that was really, Salah's shot to win it. I think Benzema ended up winning it in the end. If the Champions League final had gone a different way, then it probably would have been Salah or Sadio Mane who had won it. I mean, I think Mane was second anyway behind Benzema, having won, obviously, the Africa Cup of Nations. So it was kind of there for those Liverpool players to take. And for now, at least, it remains that elusive honour. No Liverpool player managing to win it since Michael Owen did so, I think, in 2001. The other award that was handed out yesterday, this time with no Liverpool nominee, but a high-profile Liverpool snub, you might say, was the Yashin Trophy, won by Emiliano Martinez from Aston Villa, obviously after winning the World Cup with Argentina. I mean, there's been a fresh round of kind of aghast Liverpool supporters saying, why isn't Alisson on this list? Obviously, we knew what the top 10 was anyway. The question was just what the order was going to be. But the point you made, Andrew, about how individual awards are geared around team success, I mean, that feels like it feels particularly incongruous when it comes to goalkeepers, really, where it is so much about kind of individual heroism, which obviously Alisson specialised in last season. And look at someone like Ederson, for example. There's probably a lot of games where he's sitting there leaning against his post, given how dominant Manchester City were. So it feels particularly pronounced in that case, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't understand this at all. Fair enough if you want to give it to Martinez for winning the World Cup, but for Alisson not to be in the top 10 is just ludicrous. And especially because you have to say, I mean, like, he probably had his best season last season that he's had at Liverpool, or certainly his busiest, his most sort of influential, you might say, in a lot of ways, because, Liverpool finished fifth, had a bad season, managed to finish fifth. I mean, without some of his saves in many games throughout that season, they'd have been a lot lower down the table. Now, that's not the sort of thing that's going to get you many Ballon d'Or votes. As we say, it is this thing about sort of who's playing in a successful team and stuff like that. But Alisson's probably been, if not the best, in the top 2 or 3 best goalkeepers in the world for at least 5 years. And as I say, arguably had his best season last year. We, not that we want him to be that overworked, but the fact was he was, and he was phenomenal. So for him not to be considered in the top 10, as I say, give it to the World Cup winner. That's probably inevitable, but he's got to be up there. It's ridiculous that he wasn't deemed in the top 10.
Yeah, I think he won it in 2019, I want to say. It was around then. And if you compare that season, I mean, obviously, we're still looking at an incredible version of Alisson, but, I think most people would agree that last season, I think he was Liverpool's player of the season in the end. And it was his best campaign. And that's kind of the contradiction with goalkeepers in a way. It's sort of the busier they are, the poorer it is for the team. And that's obviously never going to help you in the kind of the conversation for an award like this, I suppose, because he was obviously a lot more exposed last season than he would have been in the past. I mean, even when you look at some of the names on the list, I mean, obviously, Bono was there in third. You got Bryce Samba on the list. Livakovic, the Croatian goalkeeper from the World Cup. I mean, I think the one that has aged particularly badly from the Liverpool standpoint is seeing Aaron Ramsdale on the list instead of Alisson, and he's obviously now, been relegated to second choice at Arsenal. Onana's there as well. Obviously, he had a difficult start with Man United, but that's not really come into consideration either. So it's an interesting one, because with the Ballon d'Or, there's only been a few years where players have been harsh. It's been harsh, like, to miss out to Messi. I think this year is a pretty good example of that, to completely honest, because you look at Haaland, scores an absolutely insane number of goals last year. City win the treble. I mean, if that's not enough to get you the Ballon d'Or, then I don't know what is. But I think people look at it and say, do you know what? Messi, probably the best player of all time. I'm never going to begrudge him winning the award. It's interesting that logic doesn't really apply with the goalkeeper position, because Alisson is not just kind of the best in the world, really. He is an all-time great. So it kind of stings, I think, from that standpoint. Not even just as a Liverpool fan, just, as someone who kind of appreciates top quality football, to not see Alisson in the list, it just doesn't really seem to make much sense. But what we do know is if Liverpool have a better season, and they've started much more strongly this year, obviously, then we can expect to see not only Alisson in this conversation again, but also a few more of the Liverpool players on the list of nominees next year. But this discussion now won't be had until next autumn, which I'm sure will be a relief to you, Andrew, and plenty of other Liverpool fans as well. We'll leave it there for this morning's stream. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. And in the meantime, before tomorrow's edition, make sure you check out all the written content that goes up on liverpool.com. And also we'll have Jurgen Klopp's press conference on this channel as well later today. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.